Alright, so it's time for an update on the Seven Blessings Saison, my now Imperial Rye Saison. I'm not going to show you an update I filmed last week, obviously, because this is a more updated one for you guys. So what's been happening is I was smelling like a sulfur, rotten egg-ish flavor coming off the fermenter, and I got really worried. So after 2 weeks, I took a gravity sample. It was about 1.006 or 7 around that area, which would have made it about 8.3% ABV. So I went around and asked 2 key people. One was Dan ABA, and he recommended that I put an airlock on it to the blow-off tube, shake it up, and the excess CO2 will help the sulfur blow off. So it was blowing off well, but then I also, I told myself, let me get the mad fermentationist, or Michael Tomsmeyer, the author of American Sour Beers, opinion, because he's very good at responding to emails. I've emailed him before about my Saison. So he said there's a few options. One, I could leave it longer at a warm temperature. Another option is to transfer it off the yeast cake. Another option is to put in a keg and do CO2 scrubbing. And another option is, which I'm already using, is using Brett. So what I did was I shook it up like Dan ABA said and left it for another week. So now it's been in there for about 22 days, and I went from 10.06 down to I don't know if it's gonna focus. As usual, we all have trouble focusing on it, but the really full, again, a really full hydrometer sample. It's pretty clear, which is great, because a lot of times you wait for Saisons to clear out forever. So it's at about 1.001 or 2. I should say probably 2 because of the temperature correction, because this is over 70 degrees, about 78 degrees. So about 1.02 or 3, which is low enough for me to transfer the beer. At 1.002, as you see here, it would be from about 1069, 1070 would be the 8.9% alcohol. I mean, even if I go here and I bump it to 3 and I update it, it's still 8.79% ABV. So the proof will be in the pudding for me right now. Is, again, pulling out the hydrometer and putting it over here on my counter in a safe space so it doesn't fall and break, and then taking the glass. Yes, I did make a little bit of a mess. Been known to overfill my hydrometer sample tube, and pour it into my stone taster glass and taste it again, because last week it was smelling good, tasting okay, but I could definitely taste the sulfur in there. So within that week, because it dropped after I stirred it, I know that there was enough more fermentation going on to produce enough CO2 to blow off more sulfur or any other off aromas or flavors. So let's go ahead, and definitely smelling better than last week. A lot spicier. And the spiciness from the hops and the rye. And from what I can smell, before, even last week, there wasn't much of the sulfur off flavor and aroma, but now that it's dried out more, it's definitely a little more of a strong aroma, a little more well-rounded, or complex, I should say, or bold. So let's give it a taste. Cheers. Definitely not much sulfur in there. The extra week definitely helped. I'll have to see as it warm. It's so warm already, but I remember last week, the more I sipped it, the more I got that sulfur flavor, or sensation, I should say, at the back of my palate, because it wasn't like so strong. It's definitely ready to be transferred. It's definitely good enough, in my opinion, to be transferred. So right now, as you see, I have an airlock on it because I took off the blow-off tube and put it in there. But what I'm going to do now, and I'll show you more obviously later, is take the Brett, or the Brett Brux Bruxellensis out of the fridge, let it come up to room temperature. Once I feel that it's at room temperature, I'll probably put it in my fermentation chamber back with the beer to warm up a bit, and then what I'll do is once I've left it in there for a little bit, I'll prepare the dried apricots, which I'm probably going to use either 4/10 of a pound or a half a pound per gallon. I have to look up, I'll do a little more research, but I read in American Sour Beers that it's about 4/10 of a pound, but I might want to do a little more than that, just because it's such a spicy, big Saison. I might be able to get away with using a little bit more than, just, that 4/10 of a pound. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back. With you it'll be in a flash, but with me it'll be in a few hours. Cheers. Hey guys, so it's time to split the batch. So as you see, I have my food processor. So what I did was, I actually decided to go closer to the point 4/10 of a pound of dried fruit, because in the book American Wild Ales or Wild Beers, Michael Thomasmeyer said that in Russian River supplication, it's 4/10 of a pound per gallon. Supplication is a high ABV beer. So, I got pretty close to that, maybe just a hair over 1.2. When I was emailing back and forth with him in the beginning of my fermentation of my Saison, he recommended that at one point for April hop, Dogfish had rehydrated dried apricots and then pureed them. So that's what I'm going to do. So I have them here in this bowl, and they're pretty plumped up, so I'm just going to drain out the water. Leave a tiny bit of it in there, but they smell really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll sanitize that one that fell. And slowly pour in the rehydrated dried apricots. They actually lost a touch of their color from rehydrating for quite a while. I did it for like 25-30 minutes at least. Alright guys, so as you see, they're pureed. I just pureed them. It's still pretty chunky, but I think it's good enough. And yes, I did remember to sanitize my food processor. So I'm also going to sanitize a spoon to spoon it through the funnel into the fermenter, just to make sure that we get everything in there. So I was going to film putting the apricot puree into this 3-gallon butter bottle, but it was really frustrating. I had to add some water, some of which is in here, to thin it out a tiny bit. Then I had to put it in spoon by spoon and keep rinsing off my hand, re-sanitizing it to help coax the puree in there. So I got it in. I cleaned off the outside of the neck of and the top portion of the 3-gallon butter bottle, and now we can finally start siphoning it in. And despite the fact that I think the beer might still be active because it's pushing up the airlock I put in, but I'll show you that now. So I'm going to take you off the tripod to make filming just a touch easier. So as you see here, the beer is still a touch active because it's pushing up the airlock, but that's why I'm transferring it to secondary for at least a week, so that it could clear out and finish doing what it needs to do. And plus, because I want to get it off that potentially sulfury flavor I mentioned earlier, now that it's tasting great, I kind of want, and it's fermented down really far, I don't want to ruin it. So, and I want to catch it at its best. I filled up this 3-gallon with Star San and 3 gallons of water, so I know where the 3-gallon mark is. So I don't really I want to split the batch as evenly as possible. So once I see it getting closer to the midway of here, I'll know that I have to stop soon. So, alright guys, so I siphoned down as far as I could to split the batch. As you see, there's whatever's left there is some clear, nice looking beer, but it's too yeast filled, and since I had a lot of problems, you know, with the sulfur from the yeast, I didn't want to suck too much in. So I kept having to, you know, move the siphon back and forth. So in this one, which I'm gonna have to put in my firm chamber to clear up now, I have the like 2.5 or so gallons of the non-wild beer, and then I have 3 gallons of the what's gonna be wild beer. So I'm gonna go ahead, put some sanitizer in there, and then pitch the Brett. So I'll be right back. Alright guys, so now it's time to pitch the Brett. I already opened the vial, made sure that it didn't explode on me like it did on the original primary yeast. So just flick the cap off onto the floor. Now and pour the Brett in there. And see, I was able to get the majority of the stuff off the bottom, so I'm pretty happy with that. And I found that I've heard that people have pulled samples from their saisons and they've felt like they were carbonated. So I'm not so worried that, you know, that this one probably has star sand bubbles on top, but both of them was very hard to siphon. I even had to put like a piece of Gorilla Tape on top and try to pinch the top to try to get there from how much air being pulled in. But even though it was most likely CO2, I'm still really nervous. So I got like 2.5 gallons or so, because the 3 gallon mark is here. So it's about a half gallon or maybe less. So I got, you know, I'll get like 20 bottles or so once it clears up. And then this one is a full 3 gallons because I put in enough fruit for that, and I really didn't want to over fruit it. So I'm gonna leave that. I'm gonna leave the wild one, which I wrote wild on it, out room temperature. Even though it gets pretty hot, Brett likes the higher temps. And then I'll put this one back in my firm chamber with the blow-off tube for another week or so. And that's why it's not so bad, you know, that there's, you know, half a gallon or more, a little more of headspace, because I'm only aging it for a week till it clears out. So I'm just gonna assume that it was mostly CO2, and whatever CO2 is in the firm chamber, which with the other 2.5 or so gallons, which is now cooling down, for back to between 25.2 and 26.2, which is 77 and 79 degrees. You know, hopefully I didn't pump too much oxygen. With the Brett, it's not as much of a problem because there's so much there's still CO2 in there. It'll push out basically since it's heavier than oxygen, it'll push that oxygen out. So as the CO2 builds back up, it'll push out the lighter oxygen, and it should be fine, especially because I'm leaving it for a week. I'm gonna go relax, have a beer, and eat dinner with my wife. And I hope you guys have a good Homebrew Wednesday and awesome homebrewing adventures. Cheers.